We've learned so much about Vancouver's queer history and all the incredible work that was done in the community by previous generations. It really makes us appreciate how far we've come and realize just how lucky we are to call this city home.
Now, we're ready to learn what Queer Vancouver looks like today, because even though we've been a part of this community for more than 10 years, we're sure we've only scratched the surface of it.
What I like about the queer community today is how they are charging forward. I love the energy of millennials and zennials and how they're like firing off in all these different directions. I'm learning so much. It gives me hope that we're on that path. We're not complacent. We're not going to let anything be taken away from us, and we're going to forge ahead.
While exploring Vancouver's past, we were fortunate enough to meet some amazing queer community leaders from the last 50 years. And now, we want to find the leaders of our generation, because we know there are so many people doing great work in this city.
So it's time for us to find out, who are the activists, artists, and community organizers who are making change in Vancouver today?
Hotsquile Tanoia, Skohamish, Aslahan Okomeok, Oreen Askew, Queen Sna, Chinua, DJ Osho. My name is Oreen Askew, also known as DJ Osho. I'm from the Squamish Nation, and my pronouns are she and her.
My name is Kai. My pronouns are she, her, or they, them. I'm a student at the Sauder School of Business at University of British Columbia. I like to do a lot of poetry and just performance art.
My name is Shanique Kelly. I also go by DJ Softy Shan. My pronouns are she and her, and I am a DJ and event producer, community organizer in Vancouver.
My name's Cicely Bell-Blaine. My pronouns are they, them, and I am an activist, writer, and I run a equity and inclusion consulting company called Back Out Consulting.
My name is Angelic Goldsky. My pronouns are they, them, and I use a little bit of he, him pronouns. I'm the creative director of the Transgender Expressions Haven, and I'm also a poet and artist.
I'm on the Out on Screen board that does the Queer Film Festival, and I'm on the Pride and Arts Society board, which does the Queer Arts Festival. And I'm usually probably one of the younger board members, so it's really interesting to learn from our elder board members. But I think it's just these boards want perspective, especially from someone like myself who's very unique, Afro-Indigenous, and two-spirited from one of the host nations in Vancouver. If boards and councils don't reflect what's in the community, like, change isn't gonna happen. It's our time to get in there and to make change. So in December of 2017, I got voted into our nation's council. It's some of the best work I've ever done in connecting with people and making change happen. I got to work on portfolios that were really involving us in the community, especially the queer community. What it means to be two-spirited is just to be really open-minded, because the term two-spirited, I get told by my younger nibblings that being two-spirited is kind of like an older identification, and now it's indigiqueer, so I'm just like, oh wow, so they're teaching me as I go along.
We all have so much to learn from today's youth. They really know how to use their voices, and they are pushing to make things better for our community's future.
It's incredible to see how each generation finds new ways to continue doing the work and practice queer activism in a way that speaks to them.
I'm the only trans femme student that's visibly out at the Sauder School of Business at UBC. It feels very much like a performance every single day where I show up and it's like I'm the only person there. My activism is just being alive. Like, really honestly, for me in the situation that I'm in, and just I think being trans and queer in the world, living is an act of activism, right? And asserting yourself and asserting your identity is a form of activism. There was one position in the student government that was for LGBTQ students. It was called the LGBTQ Student Representative in this like 300-person student organization. And so the year after that, we started the first service, which was like a team of 5 of us. We put on a bunch of different events for networking and professional resources for queer students. I'm also doing a lot of the equity and inclusion work and a lot of new initiatives and a lot of new platforms and programs and things like that, kind of for myself. If I don't do it, like nobody's gonna do it. It really takes one person to drive the change, because I'm really scared that like we're never going to get more queer representation in the business world, because unfortunately the business world runs the real world, right?
Every day, our community leaders are working to make Vancouver safer for queer and trans folks. And a powerful way of doing that is sharing their experiences and educating others through things like diversity, equity, and inclusion work.
Sort of fell into doing diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting work. I think because of the nature of the events I was organizing, I would already kind of have folks say like, okay, so what would it look like to make our space more inclusive for QT BIPOC folks? What does it mean to have nightlife space feel safe for people in these communities? I think that those were questions that I was already being asked, that I was already feeling confident to support folks in, because it was so integral to the type of community organizer I was. So I was already doing like some sort of like unofficial consulting for folks. And then I ended up working at Bat Cow Consulting, which is a diversity, equity, inclusion consulting firm.
At Bat Cow Consulting, workshops is a huge part of what we do. We have lots of options, LGBTQ workshops, anti-racism, anti-oppression, and it kind of grew from there, especially in 2020, although we were in this scary time of the pandemic, we were also in this time of like awakening, I suppose. You know, people were really becoming aware of social injustice, I think, in different ways than they were before. And so that, I'm super grateful that allowed my business to grow, and, you know, people became a lot more interested in more intentional and meaningful systemic change.
So I think that the more sort of diverse voices that you have in the equity and inclusion space, the more sort of points of view that you have, the more that we can like learn from each other and listen to each other.
To have like people of color, queer folks, trans folks, not just like being the focus of the work, but actually being the ones doing the work.
I think it's important to have those folks as leaders in this space, because I think there's a really big difference from talking about something from an experience of having read about it, say, and having actually the lived experience. And I think that something that's really important to me is to just always sort of center folks in their telling of their lived experience.
You can't speak to something that's not your own experience, which makes it very emotionally draining for those of us doing it. But I think, you know, as long as we are well compensated for our labor and knowledge, then I think it works.
It's so important that the queer community has marginalized voices leading the movement. And this is something we are seeing so much more of in Vancouver today.
We founded Black Lives Matter in 2016 here in Vancouver. Because BLM as a movement was founded by 3 Black women, most of whom are queer, that was also very different from other Black activist movements throughout history. So that was something that really inspired me and you know, sparked my interest to want to be part of this, was just like seeing myself represented in ways that I had not before. Many of the leaders are queer and trans, and so that always felt like a very natural intersection was happening there. But I think both within Black communities and within queer communities, we felt maybe there was some confusion or criticism or like, just general ignorance and lack of understanding of like why these two things would be connected.
Not only is activism how we win, it's also how we don't lose ground. Protest and activism is an active, ongoing practice and habit and culture, and always needs that new energy.
Activism can look like so many things, like protest and grassroots community organizing. But today's leaders in Vancouver are advocating for queer and trans folks in all kinds of different ways, like using art as their activism and as a tool for community building.
Art, ritual, ceremony is really the way that I want to make change and bring healing for people. I'm a poet primarily, and I love language, words. Right now, for me, poetry is about yeah, expressing myself, bringing love to people, honestly, at the core of it. I think art has the biggest role ever for queer people. You know, I think it's the way that we have structured our lives.
The art of makeup, and art in general actually, was something that I believe saved me as a child growing up on a farm, way too fabulous for my own good. You know, I just didn't know where to connect in the world. So at a young age, I would go into my room for hours and I would draw. And, you know, that was something that started my love of art. After I sobered up, I found out that I was eligible for some funding for school through the Métis Provincial Council. So I found the funding for school and I was able to go to Blanche McDonald, which was a makeup school. And I work there today. So that's kind of something that's pretty special. Is the fact that I was able to go to that space when I didn't think I was able to, felt like a dream come true. Being able to come with and be in an environment of a whole bunch of artists, there's kindred there, and you feel connected. And I think that really opened up the possibility that, okay, this is something that I can do for a career.
I think art is the thing that makes you alive, really, right? If you don't create something, how do you express your existence? For queer individuals, where we live in a world that the system intentionally is designed to marginalize you and to not represent you and to not capture the way you experience the world. My poetry and my art is something that really comes from my experience. It is really raw. It's very unfiltered. That is a very direct form of activism, because I'm communicating how do I actually experience the world? How do I actually feel? What is the world doing to me and to the people around me in my community? And how do we, start to think about moving beyond that?
I was like, how can I really make change as a person? And I was like, it's in building space for expression. The Trans Haven is like a beautiful collective of trans artists. So we do a lot of like media art specifically. We have a virtual art gallery space that is a space where people can like showcase their different work of different mediums. We also do events and programs, but really it's all about just like bringing trans people together and celebrating their trans creative genius.
These are some people that are doing some really amazing things, right? They're creating spaces. Not only that, but they're creating like entirely new types of spaces, like digital spaces. The events they're running are completely different from anything I've ever seen.
So a lot of our events have this kind of digital focus. Even if they're in person, the theme is usually around some kind of like queer utopia in the future. But in addition to that, we do things as well, like have ceremonies for the Trans Day of Remembrance. That's something that we're really thankful to be able to have that space. Yeah, I think that's something that we like to focus on, is like giving space to grief, giving space to celebration. We like to kind of give space to it all as much as we can. And the way that kind of happens naturally is just what people want.
I'm Angelica. I'm a spoken word artist, musician. My pronouns are they, them, and she, her.
I'm Ocean. I'm a musician, I'm a keys player, and I'm a music educator, and my pronouns are they, them. I was a piano player and a songwriter. I went to Selkirk College for music, and I started playing as a keyboardist with bands. I want to keep doing some of that, but I also want to figure out how to make my life work with space to have original music projects.
The spoken word scene that I came up in was like very trans, very queer. That was like a whirlwind for me. Spoken word poetry, like it really pulled me into being an artist and finding community around my art. Having queer arts events has shaped me as a person.
I'm always learning from artists, and I think I learn from artists more than I learn from anything or anywhere else, honestly. And I think that there's so much that you can learn.
So I've been a writer for a long time, and in 2019 got the opportunity to publish a book of poetry, and I got to work with Vivek Shraya, who is one of my idols, and she became my mentor for publishing my book Burning Sugar. Just having a mentor who's also a queer person of color like help me and show me the ropes and edit my work was really amazing. And I think being able to use art as a form of activism and a form of education has been really exciting as well.
What art is an expression of what people are feeling inside. I think it's harder, harder for people to put themselves out there and show what they're feeling inside. So I think with music and art, I think it's an amazing thing. And I always tell the young people, I'm like, don't let them see you mad, just make art, because the art that's gonna come out of you is gonna be unreal.
I think art is the thing that really moves society forward in terms of like a consciousness, right? Without art, we don't see new ways of feeling and new expressions of identity.
The arts does this the best, is shows you what's possible, by expanding beyond what we see.
I think that art is basically the baseline for queerness. To me, the two things are so like inseparable. It's like being queer is art.
We are so impressed with the work being done in Vancouver's queer community today, and all the brilliant, talented, and creative people who are pushing for change in their own unique ways. The evolution of this city is beautiful to watch, and we have truly come so far.
It feels like we're in a really wonderful place right now, and it's only getting better. Along with so many incredible individuals doing great work in Vancouver today, we also have some amazing queer organizations that support our community.
The fact that I've been in Vancouver as long as I have been now, it's because it is very rich in it with a community focus. And so we've got a lot of different organizations that has a wealth of life experience.
My name is Michelle Fortin. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the chair of the Vancouver Pride Society. The Vancouver Pride Society is an organization whose mission is to advocate and create safer spaces and put on inclusive events for the 2S LGBTQAI+ community here in Vancouver and beyond. In many other cities, the parade is not necessarily supported by the city, and in fact driven in part of the city's calendar of events. But the Pride Parade here in Vancouver is. For some people in our community, big pride events that include corporations, include political parties, aren't necessarily their idea of a good time. So I think one of the changes that we have seen and implemented that reflect the community is trying to support more organizations that want to do work in the community, but not necessarily connected to Pride, which is good and fine and important. Our biggest expense for Pride is paying for members of our queer, trans, and two-spirit community to be entertainers at those events.
Last Pride season, that's kind of what like propelled me into performing. It was everyone's like, oh, you're queer, you're an artist, here, take the mic. If it weren't for like my queer elders looking out for me and saying like, oh yeah, like you're totally worthy, I might not be the artist that I am.
Pride weekend is probably the busiest weekend of my life every year. Just seeing how much work goes into Pride, it's really cool to see the other side.
The Vancouver Pride Society is our city's biggest queer organization, and probably the first one that people think of because of the fantastic Pride celebrations they put on each year. Vancouver Pride is a huge event every summer that brings together hundreds of thousands of people to celebrate the beauty of our community.
But Vancouver also has some lesser-known queer organizations that do really important work in this city, like organizations that are specifically working to uplift the most marginalized members of our community through protest and demonstration.
It's really important that Vancouver has queer activism, grassroots organizations, as all the organizations that are doing advocacy work and saying to the world, we're here, we're queer in all the different ways. And another really key piece is energizing it on the streets.
My name's Elle Cameron. My pronouns are they, them, and I've been involved in organizing the Vancouver Dyke March since 2016. The Dyke March is a protest, we're not a parade, and it is important for us to stay rooted in our history. So a question we often get is whether we are part of the Vancouver Pride Society, and we're not. And that's actually pretty important to us. We are a grassroots organization. The Vancouver Dyke March is an annual event that celebrates and centers the experiences of folks whose gender identity or expression intersects with their sexual orientation to further marginalize them. We're both a celebration of identity and community belonging, and we're also a protest against oppression and discrimination. Some people ask us why we use the word dyke, because it has historically been a slur. And so a lot of that is a project of reclamation and being able to celebrate and being able to see dyke as a positive identity. It's about having a community with that organizing principle. The Vancouver Dyke March every year starts up at McSpadden Park along the drive, and then starting around noon, we start marching down the drive and go to Grandview Park. We have a festival, and so we have queer artists on stage, and everyone gets to sit out on the grass and dance and participate.
One of the things I really like about the Vancouver Dyke March and Festival is how it's relied on community and individual support, and I hope that never changes.
The Dyke March is not commercial. It represents more simply being queer and being proud and being visible and present and celebrating that.
Even today, we're not fully there yet, so we can't let up. And activism and the push for equity, for equality, for representation requires active participation by us all.
Digging deeper into Vancouver in the present day has taught us more of what we've known all along, that we have such a vibrant and diverse community in this city, and it's really something special. We have so many hardworking community leaders and organizations making change and carrying forward the work that was done by our queer elders.
We are truly so grateful to be a part of this community, and we can't wait to keep learning and see what else there is to uncover in today's queer Vancouver.
Being part of this queer community is something that I am so cognizant of as being such a massive privilege. If I think about, folks in the world who don't have access to queer community, places in the world where it's not safe to access this community. And I think that it's easy to just sort of take it for granted, especially in a city like Vancouver, where there are sort of queer spaces that you can access and that you can go to every weekend. For me, I think that I sort of view my place within the queer community as one that I am eternally grateful for, and consistently sort of having to check in and remind myself how much of a privilege it is to be sort of seen and heard and valued in a community like this one.
Going out into the scene and seeing everyone express themselves so individually and so uniquely, pushes me to think about newer ways that I can express myself. We have such a crazy queer, alternative, kind of these sub-communities that there aren't out in the open, but the moment you look for them, they're everywhere. And so that's what I've been peeling the layers, oh my gosh, there's so much stuff here. I just gotta get out into the world and just go find it all.
Oh, I feel so hopeful. I love where we're going. I think that we're going to some beautiful places. Just seeing all of this beautiful queer joy, it feels like there is nothing but queerness.
One of the wonderful things about the present moment is that there are so many people now. Hopefully there's enough diversity out there that everybody can find their home and find their place and be seen and valued for who they are, in the fullness of who they are, without ever having to hide any part of themselves.
I'm still involved in Vancouver's community here today because I love seeing, and we see a lot now, of great people doing great work. I think what's really exciting is that there's so much possibility. If we continue to show up for each other, for ourselves, the only limit truly is our imagination.